Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where sometimes the best strategies are all fun and games. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. Help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. You'll never guess what was laying in wait for me in the bathroom last week. I heard something scurry in the dark, claws on tile. I looked, but I couldn't see it. And then, oh my gosh, it's right there in the corner. We're still here in Fiji this week, now on the far east side of a place called Taveuni. Last week, about as far west and north as you can go, so opposite ends of the country. Last week was a place called the Yasawas. Pretty remote, very cool, and at times pretty wild, especially at night. We've seen lots and lots of cool wildlife. We tend to lead more toward the native kind of experience rather than 5-star. 5-star was a couple of weeks ago, and it was great, but that's not the real Fiji. Last week, much more rustic, more of the real Fiji, and awesome. So we're at a place with huts and yurts and small bungalows. The bungalow there's like a bedroom, a porch area, bathroom, shower off the porch, and I got up in the middle of the night to use the facilities. And as I walked in, I heard something scurry in the dark. I mean, unmistakable claws on tile. And so I flipped on the light and I looked, but I couldn't see what it was. Sometimes better not to know, right? So, went on and did my thing, but gotta find it. So I resumed the hunt, and I found it hiding the best it could in the corner, sort of under the sink, kind of under the sink counter support there. And I'm looking to what is that? And at first I'm thinking, maybe it looks like a squirrel, which makes absolutely no sense because we haven't seen any squirrels here. But where I'm from in Texas, that would completely make sense. It fit my frame of reference. And as leaders, we encounter problems, and some we know, easy to identify. We've seen them before. They fit into our box. And others are a little bit unfamiliar. We look at it, we go, I'm not quite sure what to do with that. It doesn't fit in my frame of reference. So how do we tackle those unfamiliar problems outside of our expertise? Turn the unknown into aha. And obviously, it's a little more complex if the stakes are high. We have the future-proof decision-making framework. It covers both complex and simple decisions. We share all that with our clients. But here's a piece of it for more normal everyday problems, which in this case was what I was dealing with. Number one is to start with curiosity. Move into information gathering mode. At this stage, our goal is to expand our understanding of the problem space, not just jump to solutions. And that's really hard for me because I want to jump straight into solve mode. But when we get really, really curious, we gain new insights. And, maybe in other circumstances, reach out to your network or community for insights, experience they might have had with similar challenges. In this case, nobody was around in the middle of the night. It was all up to me. Second is to brainstorm. Or if it's a more complex problem, having a more structured brainstorming process. In my case, my brainstormer was like, all right, what lives around here? Not squirrels. And in business, we aren't alone, or shouldn't be. So pull in some diverse perspectives. Involve some team members from various departments or levels in your organization. Use techniques like mind mapping, the 5 whys. I've talked about that multiple times before, but dig deeper into the root causes of the issue. This is the time to think creatively and generate a wide range of potential approaches, no matter how unconventional they may seem at first. And I had one of those. I had an unconventional idea. Which brings me to number 3, is we're going to test and refine. Start with some small scale tests, maybe a pilot, short feedback loops, and then adjust based on the outcome. And in my case, my idea in my test was to grab a broom handle. How's that for a quick feedback loop? And it seemed like a good idea at the time. So now I'm standing in the light with a broom handle, trying to see what is hiding in the corner under the sink. And, so I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? Poke at it? And so this dark mass comes scurrying out of there with lightning speed. It was like something out of a campy horror, 60s movie. And I'm backpedaling, trying not to fall down and process what my brain is seeing at the same time. And not a squirrel. This thing was a brown crab, like a land crab, about the size of a big saucer dinner plate plus legs. And it was crazy fast. Honestly, I'm kind of glad I was alone and there weren't any cameras, because maybe might have screamed a little bit, just a little bit, manly scream, of course. And so, little gentle broom hockey, and it scooted on out the door. I thought about leaving it for my wife to find and waiting for the real scream, and no, then I thought better of it. But things that don't fit our frame of reference stretch our minds. We learn, we adapt, we grow, and maybe end up just a little bit smarter. Our expert guest last week was Eric Mersch, SaaS CFO and author of Hacking SaaS, an insider's guide to managing software business success. We talked about scaling smart, financial mistakes, and the things that help or hurt valuations. And our founder on Tuesday was Rod Moynihan, 20-year SaaS and tech services veteran, leading and scaling businesses across Asia Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, and now a SaaS board member. We talked about scaling up, critical transition points, and the mistakes made along the way. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Kirk Marple, founder and CEO of Graphlit. He previously held leadership roles at Microsoft, General Motors, and Stats. Now leading Graphlit, he is revolutionizing unstructured data with APIs, automating workflows, and knowledge extraction with LLM conversations, semantic search, and alerts. Graphlit has raised a $4 million seed round. Welcome someone turning data into decisions. Kirk Marple. Hey Kirk, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your journey from Microsoft and GM, leaving the certainty and security of the big corporations, moving over to the fun world of being a SaaS founder, and then founding Graphlit.
Yeah, for sure. So I was at Microsoft for a really fun 6 years after getting my master's, and then started to want to kind of get more in touch with customers. And so I really started to get the feel of you're kind of a couple layers away from customers at that point. And decided to start a startup. And so it was the early days of web video, and spent about 10, 11 years just bootstrapping all the way to an exit, and then worked for a couple other companies, including General Motors, different roles and CTO roles, and then decided to start a new company again. So it's been about 3.5 years. And now with Graphlit, it's been a blast.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about Graphlit and how does that work? What does it do? How does it work?
Yeah. So I had this idea for several years, and I was even trying to build this at GM and at other companies of tooling for unstructured data. So see with structured data like Snowflake and Fivetran, there's a lot of these tools out there to get your data kind of moving from the data sources into, query and retrieval in the structured world. But for unstructured data, there just wasn't the tooling out there. And so I had the idea of, I thought that was going to be the next big thing. And we were probably a little early. And so we got started 3.5 years ago. And really about 18 months ago, the tide turned when ChatGPT came out, and people started realizing LLMs are a great way to consume this unstructured data. So we had a head start that we were building an application on our platform, and then flipped to just sell the platform about 18 months ago. So we're just a API first developer platform today.
And so what was that pivotal moment that led that really kind of the change towards a developer platform? And how has that affected your business strategy overall?
It was kind of my hedge bet originally. I was kind of always thinking of like, okay, are we like a Twilio, like where it's just an API first platform and it's for developers, or are we like a portal that somebody lives in kind of day to day? And really, debated that at the company that I was at before, where I was CTO, and we went the app route. And then when I started this company, I had that same question in my head, and we kind of tested the waters a bit with one or the other, and we just weren't getting the interest from developers. It just was too early. And so we kind of went the app route. And then we were getting POCs, but we were just having a trouble selling into the market. And what we found was people were just like, well, we already bought SharePoint. Like, what do we need this for? And their IT groups just weren't really interested in a new pane of glass. Where the champions, the people on the ground, were like, oh, we need this way. We have 20 years of data. We want to catalog it. We want to search it. And that we kind of hit the classic, like, okay, the users liked it, but the buyers couldn't see the value because they'd already spent money in different places. So it was partly that, and partly I was seeing this groundswell with LLMs that we were great long-term memory, as they call it, for large language models, where in this RAG concept, you have to go retrieve the content from somewhere and then provide it and format it for the models. We had already done that part. And so we already had that kind of funnel of data in and the ability to prepare it. And so it wasn't actually a lot of work. We were already so far down that road when this pattern emerged. And we started to get more interest. I mean, honestly, of people being like, hey, I mean, we are trying to build this from open source tooling, from different vendor products. And we leaned really hard into like a one-stop shop, like betters included, elegant API. You don't need to deploy any other infra. It's just a managed service.
That's a really good concept. And I love the API first and focused on development. Is it difficult to market something like that? And because you've really got all the back end, but it's you've got the front end, and like people look at it and go, that's really cool, but what does it do? It's like selling a database. It's
it really is.
You've got this awesome thing, and they're like, okay, what do I do with it? They're like, well, store data.
It's a great question. I mean, that's been a lot of the evolution over the last. I mean, I don't know. We shipped the paid version last September, so almost a year ago. And what we found initially for the first kind of quarter or so was the same kind of thing. We would be like, hey, we'll look at the documentation. You can figure it out. Like we spent a lot of time writing good documentation, and at least that was there, but we didn't have sample apps. We didn't have examples of, okay, how do I use this in the real world? And in the first quarter of this year, that was something we leaned into a lot, where we built a bunch of Streamlit applications. We're now building some Next.js applications, and that really helped conversion. And we saw, literally an uptick in conversion when we released those sample apps, because to your point, it's like, it's like almost like a glorified database in a way. But if you don't show even the part on top of it, it's very difficult to market. And so it's a lot of our marketing today is developer relations. It's putting out content, blog posts, sample apps, GitHub stuff, podcasts like this, and been doing more in-person conference talks lately. And that's, really been hitting home with people understanding the concept, understanding the need. And we're just going to continue to ramp up and just get out there. Because I think today, my perspective is we're marketing blocked more than product blocked, of just not enough people know about us. But when people find us, they realize the value pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so many companies are sitting on just an ocean of unstructured data, and there's gold in there that they would really benefit from being able to get out. What are some of the key challenges of automating that the unstructured data workflows, and how does Graphlit make that easy?
Yeah, I often talk about it as kind of get this funnel of data ingestion where you're pulling in different data connectors for different sources. We do everything from integrated web scraping to like podcast feeds to SharePoint or even cloud storage. So you have to have that wide variety of sources you can pull from, but you also have to support a wide variety of formats. And so we're agnostic to, we support audio, we support video, images, in addition to documents and web content. So that was a really, a big opinionated piece on that we started with. We said, look, breadth first for data ingestion. And then we wanted to have the workflow be automated, that if people did nothing, it just works out of the box.
That's nice. And
so we didn't want to have a high bar for configuration, and because you get those questions. Of like, oh, well, how long does it take to integrate? Like, is this going to be, do I have to get developers take like a month? And we're like, no. Like, it literally, you can be up and running in an hour, get your API key, connect the code. And then the other piece that was really an inflection point for us was native SDKs. And so we have a GraphQL API, and we were kind of hesitating to be like, well, do we just ship the API? Do we wrap it and ship SDKs? And we started to immediately get feedback, especially from the Python community, but they weren't that familiar with GraphQL. The more JavaScript, TypeScript community was, and .NET especially, but the Python folks it wasn't familiar. So we created native SDKs, and that was another inflection point in usage for sure.
And so was it just adoption that made you make that change? Or did you see something in the market like this is something in order to get to this next market or get to that next level, this is something that we need?
For the SDK concept or just the platform? Yeah. And so really, I think it was we were getting feedback from folks that there was a bit of a too much friction. And that's really what we've been focused on is how do you remove that friction? Even today, I just got customer feedback of somebody being like, hey, this is great, but it's still like, I want more demo concept of like more just direct access to try it out without like reading the documentation. And so it's even make it easier than we thought we already had it. And so it's a continual process. It's great feedback because, I mean, I think what we're going to be releasing later this quarter is like a playground of, okay, upload a file, chat with it, like view it, extract text from it, do whatever we can do from the API, and then show code samples with it. And we have these standalone apps, but we want to integrate that into our developer portal as well. So anything we can do to compress that time of learning of the product.
That's really important. Just thinking about adoption and really just giving those wins, the dopamine hit of hey, I did something. Look what I made, and it only took 10 minutes. This is really cool. What else can I do? And it just really kind of reinforces that and gets them activated and really using it quite a bit more.
Yeah, because we have, I think, like 15 Streamlit apps now that do different things. So you can summarize a podcast or extract text from a web page or just different kind of things that are very thin, and they show just kind of one feature. And now we offer the knowledge graph generation. And so you can actually view the knowledge graph and put in the data. And those kind of things, I mean, we needed to have some visuals there. I would love to be able to invest more in the UI side from drop-in UI components. That's one thing we get asked for a lot of, hey, well, this is great, but I don't actually have a UI team. Like, how do I kind of put a chatbot in my website and just full stack? So at some point we'll get to that. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of we're resourced a bit more kind of DevRel and backend right now, but I think once we get some more front end resources, we'll kind of continue to build more widgets and build more, integrate more from an application side, and honestly bring back a lot of the features we had in our original application, and kind of come full circle from that.
That makes sense. So how do large language models, LLMs, how do those and knowledge graphs integrate within the platform? What kind of advantages does that offer in managing unstructured data?
Yeah, I mean, we see it as two sides. I mean, one on the retrieval side where you can filter the data automatically. So say you're asking a question in a prompt to an LLM, it mentions Microsoft and Seattle. And those essentially could be just words that are found by similarity search, or you can identify those as entities. And you can say, okay, this is Microsoft. It's an organization. It has a type. Seattle is a place. And we can enrich that to even find like a geolocation from that and know the bounding area of that. And we can use that for auto filtering the data that we pull in. The flip side of it is we can also add color to the context that gets handed to the LLM, where we can say, oh, okay, go enrich the word, like the entity Microsoft, with Wikipedia and get a description of Microsoft, their current revenue, founding date, founders, which might not have been in the original text of the web page or the file that you gave us. And we can then pull that data in and provide that to the LLM as well. And so it's kind of like color commentary on what the data we have from your data sources. And that's really where a lot of the power comes from and you can think of that as, call a CRM, get the last 5 sales from that customer. And that wouldn't necessarily be in the Slack message that you're indexing. It's data that we can pull from another data source. And that's really where we're seeing the growth. And there's a lot of verticals where this matters a lot. I mean, healthcare, fintech. It's like so many different vertical areas that this can apply to.
And the fact that it spans systems as well, I think that's one of the big challenges with all data, and especially unstructured data, is you've got a little bit of it over here, and you've got a bunch of it over here, and you have a bunch more that it's over here, but it's all disparate sources. But to be able to pull that into one place and make sense of it and use it in a way that makes sense, or to be able to query all that.
And we dabbled with what to call it even originally. Like, is it an unstructured data warehouse? Is it an unstructured, data platform per se, or is it? And that's where we've kind of iterated. And I don't think we were far off. You could look at us as a data warehouse. We're kind of canonicalizing the data from different sources, making it queryable. Search and retrieval is a huge part of it. But yeah, I think we could be looked at in that realm of, you have to collate that data together to then take advantage of it and consume it in different ways.
Yeah. Well, one thing we talked about last time we talked was hackathons. Mm-hmm. And how does that fit into your strategy for engaging users with the tool set, and what outcomes have you aimed to achieve at the events?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's a side of hackathons that a lot of times it's college students or the earlier developers learning new technology. Sure. And so I think it's a marketing perspective of us getting the name out there as they kind of grow in their careers, but also teaching them the concepts of RAG and unstructured data and kind of getting that generation. But it's also giving them experience with AI as well. I think we also then see exposure from, it gives us product ideas. So it benefits us of, more people experiencing the platform, kind of giving us feedback on, what essentially, because this, early developers are even better feedback because they're not going to, they're going to hit a wall earlier.
Sure.
And that feedback of, okay, how easy is the API to use? How intuitive is it? It's great feedback for us. So I think we're trying to benefit the attendees, and we're also trying to benefit the product on the other side.
So have you seen any really unique use cases or applications or things that they built, or it's like, wow, I hadn't thought of using it that way. This is really cool.
Not a ton yet. They've mostly been kind of sample app kind of level things, but there have been a couple. One in the kind of podcast discovery space, which was one of my original interests in building the platform of the kind of knowledge embedded in what we speak about in a podcast, and be able to navigate that information. And so somebody was building essentially for podcasters a chatbot that can ingest all the podcasts, index it, and then provide a way for listeners to kind of dig into that detail. And so that is one that came out of that kind of project.
That's a great use case. We should test that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's easy. I know. Yeah. No, those are really where I see, there's just, we want it to be easy to get started. We put the data in kind of out of the box. Build a chatbot, build a search tool, repurpose that content and summarize it. That all should be super easy. And then it really doesn't matter. Give us audio, give us text, give us web pages, whatever. We just work. So
I like that. So content creation has been key to getting the message out and really kind of, making Graphlit, marketing Graphlit to the masses. YouTube videos, blogs, sample apps, and you're really doubling down on content. What types of things are you doing to really get attention and draw people to the brand?
It's interesting. Even just from digging in on the marketing side, social media is a great thing for marketing. In terms of Reddit, trying to sort of get the brand out there a little bit. You have to be a little careful of over marketing on Reddit, obviously. But we do get a good bit of traffic of people finding us. Like, I'll comment about the platform or drop a blog post into a Reddit thread. And that does get a good bit of interest. And Twitter, is actually a really good source of, there's a lot of interesting discussions, especially around graph RAG and RAG in general. I learned a ton there, but also we try and share our content there. The one under-tapped, I would say, resource is videos. And I have a plan over the next week or so to do a series of videos. I've done more presentation videos or podcast type videos, but I want to do more of tutorial kind of videos. Like, okay, here, we're going to build something. Let's step through it. Maybe have a couple slides, but really a bit more level detail. We just haven't gotten the chance to do a bunch of those yet, but that's really the next step. Because we actually find traffic by other videos in the similar space that we get recommended as like a follow-up video. And so I think, it seems like it's a great way for learning. I use it as well, but for getting the word out there, it's something we need to do a better job at too.
That's really smart. Video is definitely underused in the space, and there's so much opportunity there, and it's super helpful. One of my favorite ways to learn. I think a lot of people do that.
Same. I'm definitely more a visual or audible learner, and I think having the ability to like sort of show code, but also talk it through. I don't know. Our documentation is pretty dense. There's a lot of features of the platform, and so you want to have different layers of kind of startup. How do you get started? How do you get signed up? First, kind of what do you do your first kind of 10 minutes? But when you really want to get into the details, I would love to have video series on each feature area that instead of having to read the docs, we could just have a video to watch. And I think that'll help with conversion and just, making people happier for using the platform.
Well, what have been the challenges and successes, of course, of building a platform? Mm-hmm. Maybe things that you assumptions you had coming in that were proven or disproven.
I think there's always, it's always a broader set of things that you need to do that maybe isn't obvious. It's easy to build a POC of a chatbot, but okay, well, what about billing? What about scalability, observability, security, obviously? Those are all the things that they take up your time and doing right. We have a free tier, there's quotas. We have to integrate Stripe for the paid tiers. But then you have to think about scalability and performance tied into that as well. So I think it's all the kind of ancillary areas that end up. Don't have anything to do with LLMs. They don't have anything to do with unstructured data. But building a platform to do it right, you have to do those things well. Yeah. And we looked at some of the developer platforms like Vercel or Supabase and that have really nice developer portals. They give you observability into costs and usage very well. Their documentation is clear. And so we tried to learn from folks that we thought were the best. And I think that's where, the bar's higher for developer platform than if it's painful to use or the documentation's terrible. You're not going to get that traction.
Yeah. It's easy for them to go, it's not worth the effort to do this, and either do nothing or maybe go look for something else.
Yeah, and we say we compete against do-it-yourself a lot, where they're going to cobble it together with an open source project or a couple different vendors, and on a good front, those have bigger communities. They get their scale because of you're getting like 10,000 GitHub stars, and like you're getting people because they can use it for free and integrate it at a code level. But we're kind of coming at it where, okay, you do have to get an API key. It doesn't cost you anything, but it's a service you have to sign up for.
Yeah.
And we're not open source. Our SDKs and our sample apps are open source, but the platform is a closed source. But it's just like any other cloud service. You sign up and get it and use it that way. So we're trying to balance that accessibility, but we're also trying to build a business. So we want to have it be cheap to start with and then scale with them based on usage as well. So, and so, I think it's that we see a lot of people when they start using free software, open source software, and they maybe get a demo ready, but if they really want to go into production, they realize how much more there is to the picture. And that's where we get people flipping over to us. They're like, wow, okay, you got all of it included. We don't have to, you're essentially maintaining two products, like an infrastructure product and their product they're really trying to build, and they can just outsource their infrastructure to us.
That's a big difference. Ready to future-proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed for SaaS founders and C-suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on-demand fractional C-suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current level, this is your ticket out. If you feel like your company is the world's best kept secret, we amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got you. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. It's free, and we'll pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com, where leaders evolve and companies transform.
And there's so much value in having that in a platform that's really done than trying to just build it all yourself, or like you said, cobble it together. It can be done.
Yeah.
But then, is it scalable? Is it going to work long term? Is it really what you want?
Yep.
Maybe.
And then as a developer, we all know, there's platform risks too.
Yeah.
And so we get, folks are like, well, what happens if we want to leave you guys? Where does our data go? And one thing we've been looking at is kind of, okay, how do people want, if they want to export of their data that they've already paid to ingest, how do we give that back to them? And so we've been looking at different ways of like an archival solution. So we could snapshot all the data that they have into like a blob storage, like a S3 bucket or something. And so, that's a big thing. We want to make sure that we want to be the best. But obviously, if there's a reason that somebody wants to leave the platform, we don't want to hold them back from that and make it painful for them either, because maybe they'll want to come back some other day.
And at the same time, that I would think would be a real motivator to stay with the platform is you don't have to go figure all this out somewhere else. So, I would think the churn would be really low because who would ever want to leave?
Yeah, it is. Our churn's very low right now. And it's really from once you start putting data in, it's like, does anybody ever leave SharePoint? Right. You just continually add data or Google Drive. It's a continual process. And for our business model, that works great. Because there's a platform fee people pay, and then they pay by usage of the data that we ingest, and then how they consume the data, like using it in part of a RAG conversation or things like that. But typically it's front loaded more on the data ingestion cost.
Sure, that makes sense. And how did you decide the pricing model? What was the thought process that went into putting that together?
Yeah, I did a bunch of research on it. I knew that we wanted to be usage-based because our COGS, our cost of goods, are usage-based. LM tokens, sure. It would be really hard to do a per seat price or per user price because it's really someone's building an application on top of us. So we just kind of emulated like an Azure or AWS kind of usage-based model. We map it to what we call a credit, which is an aggregate. And so it's aggregate of compute, storage, LM tokens, and API calls, third-party API calls. And essentially it's COGS plus margin. So we're just adding some margin on top of whatever raw cloud costs folks have. And then we have a platform fee. It's basically tiered, and essentially that's their support cost. And so the more data they put in, essentially we're covering support, giving them a limit of how much data they can put in the platform before they have to go up to the next tier. But it also gives them a discount on usage cost. So we're like 10 cents a credit going down to 8 cents a credit. And so they as they scale, it actually ends up being more cost effective for them.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's important figuring out, how it is that buyers want to buy. And so you did really well on that and kind of aligning that. They're building applications, and so the seat model doesn't work. And, what is the cost? And kind of getting those in alignment, not only with your own internal structure, but also how do they want to buy? How is the market going to perceive this in, using it in their applications?
Yeah. And one thing it was important we did is we let people bring their own API keys for OpenAI or different things. So they can either just pay through us, don't have to configure anything. But for, the larger customers, they don't want to add margin onto something they're already paying like OpenAI for. So and really a lot of times for different use cases, the LM token cost is way higher than our cost. And so that ends up being easier for them, where they can just pay OpenAI directly. They deal with rate limiting and all that kind of stuff themselves. And then they're essentially paying us for more just the compute and storage side of things. Yeah. So all the workflow, all we do. basically just goes into that. And that ends up making it, even more cost effective at scale for folks.
So are there other LLMs that you're using besides OpenAI, or is that the one that you've picked that one
Yep.
and that's what you've embedded?
No. So we're fully model agnostic. So we integrated with Anthropic and Mistral and Azure OpenAI and Grok, a whole bunch of them now. And so we basically look. if there's going to be one out there that people want, we'll integrate it. So we have an easy pattern for building kind of those model connectors. And then we have the connector kind of model for things like audio transcription. So you can pick the transcription model you want to use and different things like that. And we actually are just adding in for PDF extraction. You can bring your own OpenAI key or Azure AI document intelligence key and pay that directly if for folks that have a lot of scale.
It makes it really, really easy. So like you said, they're not paying twice and it's something they already have. So I just plug it in and go.
Yeah. And then for us, since there's volume, we still make a little money per file or whatever for just the workflow processing. And so then it ends up still being we don't want to be the long pole in the tent for their costs. And we want to make sure that we still can maintain a business, but we also don't want to be so much that it would be cheaper for them to build this themselves.
So in the pricing model, you start out at the free tier. And have you seen a lot of uptake, into the paid once they build something, go, wow, this is amazing, and then you jump in? Has that met expectations? Has it been easier or harder than you thought it would be?
I think it's been about what we thought. I think we're getting, conversion rates are going up, which is good.
Yeah.
I think we see that tied into the SDK releases, the sample app releases. People are understanding what they can do with it more. And so we're getting quicker conversion. We also did do a little tweaking of the quotas on the free tier because we realized we were almost giving away a little too much. And so we've adjusted that our first paid tier just starts at $49 a month. So it's really not, plus usage. It's really not a high jump.
Sure.
But we want to make sure that if people are using it in a real product and they need, kind of higher rates for access to the platform, it shouldn't be such a big hurdle to get over. And then we kind of tier up from there to like a full enterprise where then they would pay like $1,000 a month.
So how did you approach the developer friction and just you getting past that so they sign up and just eliminating friction at every step to make it easier? What was the process that you went through to figure that out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when we started, it was just documentation. And so we had the GraphQL API that was documented and they had the schema. We had an API explorer in the developer portal so they could make queries. And we had, I probably spent like a week like just writing documentation day and night. And when I first started, but we were seeing a lot of friction of, they'd sign up and then they wouldn't do anything. They would just create their project and they wouldn't know what to do next. And so we address this in two ways. The sample apps we talked about, but we also redesigned the developer portal. And so now when you create a project, we have a much better starting page that links properly to documentation and sample apps and kind of gives them a okay, start here, do this concept. And then we have the API keys that they can just copy right out of there. And so, obviously from the feedback we got today, there's still more we can do I think the biggest next thing we see is the next hurdle is directly uploading content through the portal, which today you have to use the API, and directly having a chat conversation with it as well. And we've known that. It's on the roadmap, but I think that's something we're getting to this quarter is kind of a more end user focused. Even though they're a developer, the first day I think they're almost more like an end user. They just want to kick the tires on the functionality rather than write code. And so I think we're still trying to close that gap where it's just it's almost like a ChatGPT tool that happens to have an API with it. And then once people get past the first day or two of just kicking the tires, then they're just talking to the API or the SDKs. And they don't need the developer portal onboarding stuff as much.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And for your go-to-market
And
motion, it's primarily product-led growth, but then before you had the app and you're doing proof of concept, was that a shift as well in how you were going to market?
100%, 100%. Yeah, we were totally B2B sales outbound motion before. And now we're completely PLG and really just trying to drive it through developer relations, content marketing. So we're marketing led growth now rather than sales led growth before. So, and that was the biggest change for the company. I think the other was going more to a back end focus rather than a front end developer focus from internally. And so we had to change the makeup of the development team because we just didn't have as much UI that we were building. And so it did incur some downsizing and kind of readjusting the makeup of the team at that point as well.
Yeah. So how do you see that changing then as you're starting to build more back, I guess more the front end and kind of build that back? Do you see that shifting, or is that just going to be part of the platform?
Yeah, I think it will slowly. I think we won't get back to where we were and how many front end developers we had before, but we'll probably double, where we're at today. I think that'll be an important step of if we can then be more of a full stack platform. And really just, it's all about developer productivity. Like how can we do things, replicate them, and just, and most likely we'll open source all the UI components.
Okay.
That then it's just make it a lot easier for folks to integrate because I don't really care about like selling UI components. I really want to, actually just make it easier to kind of pull the API into this, into other people's applications. So.
Have you explored the idea of a marketplace where people could build UIs and front end components and make those available?
It's an interesting question. It's come up a couple times. The way I've been looking at it is the reverse of talking to companies that are building UI as a service, that are building like chatbot copilots and integrating us into them. And so essentially their customers would come to them and say, oh, hey, I need a copilot, like a kit of just a done kind of chat experience. And we use us as a backend. So that at least initially is the angle. We haven't seen enough requests that I would consider it a marketplace yet. But we have had requests of people being like, hey, this is great, but like, can you just give me something that just works out of the box that I can just drop into my app?
Yeah.
And we're getting there. And it's definitely, we just released a ChatGPT like interface. We're releasing a web scraping and text extraction interface, these sample apps that are Next.js, which should be really easy to repurpose into other applications now.
Yeah, sample apps are absolutely key. Just showing people what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, I see for the next couple of months, like we're just leaning into just more and more sample apps. And then also was just even looking at, taking some of the sample app concepts and now adding those into the portal. Because our portal is done in Next.js, it's actually really easy to repurpose the sample app kind of pages. And maybe we'll just drop those in as like a playground.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're thinking right now.
So what do you think the future is for AI? What's next? What is it going to look like, say, a year down the road?
I think it's interesting. It almost has slowed down a little bit, I think, over the last quarter of, you were getting almost like a model a week, like from the big foundation model vendors. I think it's starting to settle into some patterns. I think we're still getting, new model releases, which are pretty impressive. I think the curve, the sort of acceleration curve seems to have slowed down and every model is not like 10x greater than the previous model. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also, that's good because I think it was almost overwhelming at first. People were like, if I'm going to get started, then I'm going to have to throw this away in 3 weeks when a new thing comes out. I think for us, the data part of what we do doesn't matter what model you're using. It could be GPT-7. It's still going to just work. And so that's where we're focused on the kind of infrastructure layer. And we're assuming new models are going to come out every month or every week, and we'll just be able to plug them in. And I think that's going to, the commoditization of AI, I think it will happen. Continually happen. I think we'll start to see more of a solidification of agents and kind of multi-step processes, which I think is it's a balance of like, you could say it's overblown a little bit of hype right now, but I think to me, it's more like the workflow automation products that have been around for 20 years. And so I think it's a bit of a new term for something that we've been doing for years. I mean, a lot of these agents are not that different from like Windows Workflow Foundation from 15 years ago or whatever that was. I mean, so I think you'll start to see sort of shakeout in that space of like I think it's maybe people in AI are now realizing the power of workflow automation. And so I think, I mean, we'll start to see those worlds merge a little more. And the last thing I'd say is multimodal. I mean, more models that cross the chasm between text and audio and imagery.
Yeah, that'll be really, really nice as that continues to the convergence of the technologies.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be good for all of us.
But I think reasoning is still very weak in a lot of these models. I mean, even GPT-4o is great in some areas and cost effective, but it actually is terrible in some other areas. It just like compared to 4 Turbo. So I think, the companies are trying to find a balance between cost and sort of quality. And I think we're going to see that start to shake out. And like right now, like Sonnet 3.5 is like the best one out there.
That's my favorite.
But I'm sure GPT-5 is going to kick its butt, and then Anthropic will come out with something else. Or maybe not. And maybe we'll start to see a new leader. But it's just on a data point, like we've been doing knowledge graph extraction, and Sonnet 3.5 is amazing from the density of the entities and the relationships that it gets back for a piece of text compared to the GPT models, and like noticeably better, almost 2x in terms of just the number of things it can identify. And so it's really been impressive. And for us, the great thing is, hey, I mean, we just get better when the next model comes out. The other thing you need to think about is, well, when do you want to reprocess data? And that's actually a cost thing that we need to take care of with customers, where maybe this isn't just a one-pass process. I mean, you may want to go and re-embed your data at some point with a new embedding model. You may want to go and re-extract your data with a new model. And that's where this stuff gets hard, is how do you do that and become cost effective, where you just don't have to like re-ingest everything? Maybe you could do that in place.
Right. So. And depending on the type of data, just because it's a newer model doesn't necessarily mean it's a better model for specific use case. So it's I think, kind of making sure that that's aligned in, what it is that you're processing. Does it make sense? Just because of the new model, do we need to go reprocess all that? Maybe.
Yep. And we actually let customers have that choice. And so like we're, even today, we're still using the standard Ada 002 embedding model from OpenAI. We're going to let people pick an embedding model when they create a new project. And then eventually we'll let them re-embed in the background.
Okay.
Because we want to do that with the batch embedding APIs that OpenAI has. But the other problem is, I think Anthropic doesn't have a batch API yet. I might be wrong. But we'd love to be able to support that across all models. So we're going to kind of hesitate a bit until we can hope that we can do that across all providers. But yeah, it's a big, given the tokens are a big part of the cost, anytime you want to reprocess or re-embed, it's going to be a big cost,
Sure.
Facet of your cost.
Well, where can people learn more about you and about Graphlit online?
Yeah, graphlit.com for the company, and then we have a documentation and sample apps linked to the website. LinkedIn, I'm on there, and then Twitter is definitely I'm on there as Kirk Marple, and Graphlet's on there as Graphlit.
Outstanding. We'll make sure and link all of that in the show notes. Kirk, great conversation today. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Yeah, great questions. No, happy to be here. Thanks.
Thanks again, Kirk, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. You can learn more about Kirk and Graphlit at graphlit.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to check us out on YouTube as well at Champion Leadership. Full episodes, video shorts, training, outtakes, all sorts of things there for you. Thought leaders share. This week, share with somebody who could use a good laugh over midnight crab in the bathroom. Everyone who shares this week gets a live crab. How about that? Place it anywhere you like. Scare your friends or drop it in a pot and share it with your friends. The choice is yours. Join us Thursday for our special Double Founders Week, where my guest is Brad Dickinson, CEO of Social HP. It's an employee advocacy platform. We're going to talk about the evolution of executive thought leadership and how it's become critical for the C-suite to be visible and transparent in order to build trust. And the next Tuesday, we have founder Stephen Webster, founder and CEO of Ascensi.ai. It's an amazing use case for AI as a virtual trainer, brilliant solution, and equally sharp founder. We'll also learn maybe a little bit about what martial arts and business have in common. So I will see you next time, and as always, watch out for those land crabs, and for sure, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSFuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.